Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here with you and to see you all here. You know, it's the World Series tonight. We know that we made a divine choice to be here. I wanted to start by telling you about a new pastor who is in town who decided that he wanted to meet his parishioners. So he went out and knocked door to door and went home to home, and he was meeting people and it was going very well. And until he went to one house and he knocked on the door and he could tell that somebody was home. Knocked on the door, no answer, knocking, no answer. So finally gave up and he took one of his cards out of his pocket and he turned over and he wrote on the back, Revelation 3:20, and he stuck it in the door. And the next day was Sunday and they had church service, and in the collection plate, the card was there that he put in the door. And he looked on the card, and under his Bible passage, the person had written Genesis 3:10. So Revelation 3:20 says, "Behold, he who knocks on the door, he who hears will answer, and will let him in, and I will dine with him, and he will dine with me." And Genesis 3:10 reads, "And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was scared because I was naked." So we're going to talk about the revelation of God consciousness, but not that kind of revelation. Glad that pastor didn't have to see that. So we're in week 4 of our Adventures in Faith series. We're doing it on Wednesday night, along with Sunday spirit groups around the city. Who here is in a spirit group? Anybody here is part of this? We've got a bunch of us. So thank you for coming tonight and hearing about this. And some people are like, well, why are you doing it on Sunday? You're doing it on Wednesday. I'll tell you, I think about it and I think that, well, the minister needed it. And so I just love this book. Have you been reading Lessons in Truth? It's like it has this energy to it, doesn't it? It's just so full with truth and just spirit energy. It's a powerful teaching. I'm really grateful to work on it and to just share with you my own thoughts as we go through the teachings. So tonight we're talking about revelation of God consciousness, the 8th lesson, spiritual understanding. So what is understanding? So we know that when we go to school that we're there to learn, to gain knowledge, right? So we're evaluated on our understanding. So the teacher teaches us 2 + 2 is 4. And then when you get an exam and it says 2 + 2 and you write 4, then the teacher knows that you got it, right? You gain that understanding. You have that knowledge. So that's intellectual knowledge. And we can understand these 12 lessons of Lessons in Truth at the level of the intellect, right? You can study it, memorize chapter and verse of Lessons in Truth, and really get it, really be aware of it in the mind. And that's a great place to start. But that's just the very first fruits. And this is what Emily Cady is telling us, that we begin at the level of intellectual knowledge, but it's got to drop in to the heart, into a spiritual understanding, and that's really the next step. So we began last week, I talked about denials and affirmations, and that's a great spiritual tool for us to transform our consciousness into a deeper awareness of these teachings. But Emily Cady tells us that even doing denials and affirmations is not the deepest level of the spiritual work that she's teaching us that are Unity teachings and Lessons in Truth. So she says in the text in this chapter, you may say to yourself, or another may silently say to you over and over again, that you are well and wise and happy. Great affirmations, right? This is simply a form of hypnotism, she says, or mind cure. Wow, so I'm conditioning my mind. But she says, until down in the depths of your being. You know, we were singing at the beginning of the service, down in my soul, down in the depths of your being, deep in your soul, in the depths of who you are conscious, and she emphasizes conscious of your oneness with the Father, at the depths of your being, that you're conscious with your oneness with the Father. Until you know that within yourself, that spring of all wisdom and health and joy is within your own being, ready at any moment to leap forth at the call of your need, you will not have spiritual understanding. So we can convince our minds of the truth. We can know it, but she said until we know our oneness with God at the very depth of our being, then we don't have spiritual understanding. And she tells us you can't buy it. And I know if you're like me, it's like, when's the next great spiritual book that comes? Deepak's book is coming out. That's going to be the thing that's really going to awaken me and be the thing to really open my consciousness. And yeah, there's going to be some great teachings that I know he's going to bring us and invite us into. And we can hear them and listen to them and just accumulate more and more. And all the books and spiritual services, everything we come to, accumulate more until it drops into our hearts and we really know it at the depths of our being. It's not from the awareness of spiritual understanding, is what Katie is telling us. We can't get the realization of God consciousness from another person. I wish I could just give it to you, my own awareness. I wish I could give it to you. I know that as a minister that I can really just allow myself to struggle and get overwhelmed if I think that I have responsibility for each person's revelation of God consciousness, that I can't make you feel it, make you know it, that it's an individual path that we're all on. I only ever really realized it by doing my own work. Yes, I was inspired and uplifted when I went to services and like she described, you're thinking differently, but it's not really who you are. You're not in the depths of your being until you open up, move from the head into the heart, into spiritual understanding. She tells this story that's in the book of Acts of this man, Simon, who tries to buy spiritual understanding from another person who he sees that possesses it, a great person. And the Apostle Peter says to him, "May your silver perish with you, because you thought you could obtain God's gift with money. You have no part or share in this, for your heart is not right with God." So it's a matter of getting our hearts right with God to receive the gift that is already given. And how do we do that? How do we open our heart to really receive and not just get stuck in our minds? And she goes on to say, crying to God, telling God all your problems, that's not going to bring spiritual understanding. Beseeching, begging, bargaining, pleading, all that kind of stuff that we can tend to do is not going to get you spiritual understanding. So what's the problem with that? We say all prayers are heard and, God hears all prayers and, is there a wrong way to pray? Well, the problem with all that is that there's a disconnect, right? There's a separation. There's an idea that it's something outside of yourself that you've got to buy or find or get or hear or accumulate or the next thing that's coming up. We can't learn spiritual understanding by reading it or buying it. Katie said, they have not received because they do not know how to take that which God freely offered. That God is freely offering spiritual understanding and love in this depth of consciousness. But if we don't recognize its availability within us and we're seeking it outside of ourselves, there's a disconnect. So we can't get there by thinking our way there, by thinking it's not already available to us. That's separation. So how do we get spiritual understanding. Katie says, I cannot reveal it to you. You cannot reveal God to another. She says you have to have a new birth of consciousness into the consciousness of our spiritual faculties and possibilities, and that it comes to anyone. It comes to any and all who seek it aright. Who seek it aright. So it is available to each one of us. You don't have to have any kind of specialness about you. It's all of our divine inheritance to have this opportunity to be in a new birth of consciousness, to realize the revelation of God consciousness within us. Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom, and all will be added unto you. And he also said, consider who you serve first. Consider this day whom you serve. Whom do you serve? So it's the putting of God first. Are you choosing to put God first? Or are you choosing to serve everything outside of yourself? Because there's a lot of stuff to do, right? We've got a lot going on here at the ministry as I think about it. And then when I go home, I've got a 3.5-year-old who's got 16 hours of energy every day. Who takes up a lot of my attention, and there's always just trying to fit in laundry, trying to, pay bills, and you fit in this, and you fit in that, and you feel like there's so much doing. And I just decided, I'm reading this, I'm so inspired by this, and meditation and prayer is such an important part of my life, and I think you can have a lot of spiritual doing too. We think it's a lot of doing of things, work-related or family-related. There's a lot of spiritual doing. And that I just started giving myself time to just be. Have you done that? Just to be like, the weather is so nice now with the humidity down, and I've just been sitting out on my patio, my back patio, because it's nice out. I light some incense I got in the bookstore, and there's a few different ones. I haven't burned the Nag Champa. That's Karen's favorite. I just got that one yesterday. But so just to sit and listen to the sounds, and I hear the cars going by on the highway because I live kind of close to the highway, and it's just kind of like this white noise of life going around. And I watch squirrels jumping from branch to branch in the big tree in my backyard, and I heard the wind going through the leaves, and just watched the smoke billow and the different ways it goes. Sometimes it went toward me and it smelled so beautiful because it's jasmine and sandalwood, and sometimes it went out this way. And just to sit on the planet as it rotates on its axis and just ride the earth and be. Just be. Just to take time to be. That spiritual understanding is not going to come from my trying to think my way there or figure it out. That when I just flow and open myself and let go of the trying to figure it out, the revelation is available. Katie says the new birth takes place in the silence, in the invisible. That when we take that time to close the outer door, to go inside, next week, on Sunday, Mike will be talking about finding the secret place. Spending time in the silence opens us up to the spiritual understanding that's available within us, that's freely given, as she says, when we go to our hearts. And she quotes Jeremiah 29:13, when you search for me, you will find me, if you seek me with all of your heart. You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, right? That's what Scripture says, all of your heart, that it is your greatest desire as we seek God first before all things. So how do we find God in our hearts? I love this story from Jack Kornfield. He tells of this rabbi. This is a story from the Jewish mystical tradition, who taught his disciples to memorize and to contemplate the teachings and to place the prayers and the holy words on their heart. And he always said that we place them on our heart by doing this. And one day, one of the rabbi's students said to him, "Why do you always say on our hearts and not in our hearts?" And so the master replied, "Only time and grace can put the essence of these stories in your heart. Here we recite them and learn them and put them on our hearts, hoping that someday when our hearts break open, they will fall in." And I love that story because I notice in myself when I'm struggling, when I'm going through some loss or some grief or a hard time in my life, that I can be more open to not being satisfied with the things outside of me, that I can really be more tender and open to letting that go and to seeking what is within me. And so if you're finding yourself where you go, I feel like I'm in a dark place right now, or I'm in a place of struggle or hurt, I feel heartbroken, that's the perfect place to let yourself just soften and open and deepen into the truth that is available. Because I believe we're more willing to desire God more because we can't fix it. We can't figure it out. There's so much out there going on. We can let go and open. And so recognizing that is really the gift in that of going deeper into your heart. As Siobhan so beautifully sang, the God of the hills and valleys, that there are gifts in the low points of life that are available to us when we realize we can't find freedom in the intellect, when our hearts are broken open, and we let go of doing this, and we can just be. So in being, we seek what is real. We let go of worldly things, worldly desires. We let go and we listen to the still small voice, and we discover the light in our hearts, and we know who we are. So knowing that we think we need to do so much for others, and what can we do to help or fix or make it right, and that when we are centered in our divine presence and who we really are, that is the greatest gift. Isn't it, ministers? We know this, that bringing our divine presence to others, that's the greatest gift that we really can give. There's no formula for this awakening to spiritual understanding, God consciousness. I wish I could give it to you. I wish there was a direct, do this, and then you'll be awake. There's not a formula. It's their own discovery, and that's also the beauty of that awakening. We've got to start with the personal before we can go to the universal. And some people have said, why do we still study this guy, Jesus? Why is he so important? We could just do this without talking about Jesus, right? There's other language, other ways, but we've got to see the master. We've got to see an example. We've got to understand it in the particular before we can move into the universal. The universal, that's how our psyches work. We see it expressed in him, and then we get what is ours to do because we see the example. And then we can really understand the universality of the Christ consciousness through that personal awareness within us and within a master teacher. We know the truth in our hearts, and we can see how it's true for all people. And so I want to just close with, I promise to keep it short tonight because there's game after all. To close with this, I love how our kids are doing lessons in truth in their classes on Sunday in the Sunday school. And so my daughter came home with this from the pre-K 3 and 4 class. It says, "Truth expressing as me," and it's fish. And she decorated it so beautifully. Didn't she do a great job? And I can only imagine what they might have learned about the lesson about spiritual understanding, that the fish is surrounded by water and that God is everywhere, just like for a fish, water is everywhere. Perhaps what I want to share for you tonight is that if you feel like you've been swimming upstream and you've been hitting all kinds of resistance, it might be time to just flow with the river, to let go of all the doingness and flow with life like this fish, this beautifully colored fish. Be the fish. Flow with life. So we have an affirmation that we're doing this week in our community. I invite you to repeat after me. All that I need to know is within me. All that I need to know is within me. And so it is. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.